Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. I want to thank you all for tuning in as you do each and every week. Shout out to those of you who are watching on YouTube as well as Spotify. It is truly a celebration. Again, it is a celebration. At the time of this recording, the day that this episode is being released, November 19th, 2025, just a mere 10 years ago today, the 12 Kyle podcast was born. And it's also my 700th episode. So yes, we are celebrating 10 years of the 12 Kyle podcast. Now, I'll be honest, it's really surreal to even utter those words. And the reason being is that I don't think anybody sets out to have a podcast for 10 years. Hell, I don't even think people set out to have a podcast for a year at the time that it started. And you definitely don't aim or shoot for 700 episodes. It just doesn't happen unless you are really, really dedicated at the craft of, making something and creating something special and then creating it and recreating it more so for yourself than it is your viewers or your listeners. But yes, on this day, 10 years ago, we started the 12 Kyle podcast. And again, this is also my 700th episode. And again, nobody thinks to have a podcast this long. I definitely didn't think I'd be doing it this long for any particular reasons, because you just don't think like that. You just think about the moment and what you're going to create and what you're going to talk about. And then hopefully you get a few people to listen. And I've done just that. I've had quite a few people join me for this ride, and I'm very thankful for it. I can tell you what I remember about my first episode. I wasn't really nervous or anything like that because of my background. As many of you know, maybe you don't know, I had an internet radio show called The 12 Radio Show, and I ran that for 5 years, from 2010 to 2015. And that morphed into the 12 Kyle podcast. And I was actually looking forward to it. I didn't know who was going to listen. But I know more than anything else, I wanted to create something where I felt like I was doing something and saying something more so for myself and not necessarily for just to be doing it. Because at that particular time, everybody didn't have a podcast. When I started in 2015, a lot of people didn't have podcasts. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I was the first one to have a podcast, but a lot of my contemporaries then aren't around now, and some for different reasons. And it's okay because, everybody pods for a different reason. And I can't really tell you why people do or don't. I just do know that this was something that I loved doing. And I said I was going to ride the wave until it crashed on the shore. And so far it hasn't crashed. And it's been something that I've enjoyed immensely over this time frame. Now, a question that I think I get asked this from time to time, and this is my best answer. Why did you have a podcast? Why did you start a podcast? And the first time that I really, really dug deep into the answer, my niece, Taylor, shout out to Taylor. She was in college at the time, and she had a mass media class, and she needed to do some interviews. So she hit me up. She said, "Uncle Kyle, can I interview you?" I was like, sure. I mean, why wouldn't I want to sit down and talk with my niece? And she asked me, one of the questions was about this podcast. And she said, "Well, Uncle Kyle, why are you doing this podcast?" And I'd been asked that question before, but it really struck me at that moment and I explained to her that we don't know how long these mediums are going to be around. Let's just assume they're going to be around for the next 100 years. One of the things that I didn't get a chance to do was get to know the men who are responsible for me being here, meaning my maternal and my paternal grandfathers. If you follow the podcast, I did an episode on them a few months back at the time of this recording called Eddie and Winston. And so I talked about in that episode and also in the conversation that I had with Taylor was that, I would have loved to have, one, heard their voices, two, get their thoughts on the world and things around them and, who they were as men. And so for me, I felt like this podcast would do that. And so let's just say this medium is around for the next 100 years. My grandkids, who aren't here yet, it may be a while before I get grandkids, but my grandkids, great grandkids, they'll know a little something about the guy who kind of paved the way for them. And I think that's important. I think legacy and things of that nature are very important. But it's more important about your family, because I'm not doing this for money, and I'm not doing this for, notoriety or anything like that. I get enough attention, but it's really been a blessing, and it's really been more than anything, a lot of fun. And I've been able to share my thoughts and share bits and pieces of who I am with people who listen. Now, one of the cool things about this podcast is that once you record an episode and you put it out there, because as a creative, we want to make sure that we create things. But once you're finished with the product, once you're finished, typing, or once you're finished drawing, or whatever it is, once you finish recording your music as a creative, you have no idea, one, how it's going to be accepted, and two, where it's going to go. So it's disseminated out into the universe. And I am amazed at some of the feedback and some of the responses that I get from time to time. And it's always mind-boggling, because the thing that you think about is, I created this episode based on something that I thought about in my house, in my car, or maybe in a conversation with my wife or my kids. And so that's always like a bug out to me. Or and I'm not big into numbers or anything like that, but if I pull up the numbers and somebody's listening to this episode in China, listen, I don't know nobody in China. In fact, I can almost assure you that when this episode is being heard in China, it's being heard in English. There's no Chinese interpretation of this podcast. So each episode is being listened to around the world, and I'm just very thankful for that. And again, I don't do it necessarily for any type of notoriety or fame or fortune. It's been very therapeutic and very interesting for me to just give you and share with you my thoughts on whatever it is I want to talk about. And the thing that I try to make sure is that I give you the real, authentic me. I've often said this before, and I'll say it again. 12 Kyle and Kyle are the same person. I'm not anybody different when I, put down the microphone. If we're fortunate enough to meet, I want people to feel like I'm the same guy from the podcast. The last thing I want for people to have heard this podcast and felt like they've gotten to know me in some way, shape, or form, and then I meet them in person and I'm not who they think I am. No, I'm every bit of who you think I am. But it's been a lot of fun. So I answered Taylor's question just by saying that, I wanted to make sure and create something to where, in the event these mediums are around for years and years and years to come, long after I'm gone, that people will be able to get a sense of who I am and what I'm about. While it's not totally and all me, it's a piece of me, and thus the name, and thus why I don't talk about, who Cardi B is sleeping with, or, what basketball player got this celebrity Instagram chick pregnant. I mean, that stuff's cool, but honestly, it's not my steez. It's not my wheelhouse. I can't even say I'm entertained by that stuff. I know that it exists because I'm in group chats where my friends send me stuff and I read it and I keep it moving. But I'd rather tell you about what I thought about, hip hop, or what I thought about a particular album, or what I thought about an event, or share with you what the world was like in 1985 when there was no internet, or in 1995 when there was no internet, but we were really outside, or my times at my beloved alma mater, South Carolina State University. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a very dope honor to do this podcast. And I'm honored by those who have participated. I'm honored by those who've allowed it to happen. And I'll touch on that in just a second. First and foremost, before I thank anybody, I definitely have to thank my wife, Sharice, because one, I'm not always the easiest person to deal with, contrary to what you guys might think. But seriously, I mean, we've been married at the time of this recording 25 years. And I always love the fact that she's allowed me this space to be creative and for me to do my thing. And also, she's been a part of this and she's seen this podcast grow. And she's come on here and we've shared our stories, and she'll share more when she finishes this doctorate. But I'm very appreciative of it. We have a family calendar, and like when I'm booking guests, one of the first things I do is I check the family calendar, to make sure that nothing else is going on that particular day. But I love the fact that she's always allowed me this space to where it's not interfering with our marriage, it's not interfering with me being a father to our kids, but just and being very supportive of it. And I think that goes a very long way. At least in my book, it does. Because everybody doesn't have that. And honestly, I've talked to other podcasters who, have different schedules, and everybody has different schedules. Everybody's busy. I get it. But it's one thing to have someone in your corner who is going to ride with you no matter what. I mean, that goes a long way. So I'm definitely appreciative of her. Second, my kids. All of them have been on the podcast before, and I thoroughly enjoy, having them on. And I'll be honest, I don't think they listen to. I know they don't listen to every episode, but what I get a kick out of is that my kids now have friends who listen to the podcast, which is a total bug out because, I've had. I'll use Cameron for example. Some of his friends have been like, "Yeah, I heard your dad's podcast, such and such." And he's like, "Well, what do you talk about?" Like that. And then he may say, "Well, Dad, I heard you were talking about this." And I was like, "Oh, did you hear the podcast?" "Oh, well, no. Well, my friend Whoop-de-Whoop heard it," or whatever like that. So that's been really a lot of fun. And it's been an enjoyment having them on. They're my world. So anytime you can have your children participate in the stuff that you like doing, I think that's a bonus. And I got to thank everybody who has, over this 10-year period, over these 700 episodes, everybody who's contributed to the podcast, who's come on as a guest, whether or not you were on one time or you were on 11 times like my man E Collect. I just really appreciate it. I can't tell you guys enough. I don't have people on the podcast that I don't know. Even if I vaguely know them, there has to be a rapport. And so what you see is a certain synergy between me and these people that I have on. And, more often than not, even if it's just fellow podcasters, what you see is one, a level of respect, two, a level of professionalism, and then three, a bond that we share that you really can't touch or break. And I will say that I'll be honest that, I've made lifelong friends through these mediums. I mean, male and female, I've made lifelong friends through these mediums. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes. If you want a podcast where culture, conversation, and life collide, where you get insightful commentary, engaging discussions, and a fresh perspective on everything, then you need to listen to the 12 Kyle Podcast. Hosted by the one and only, yours truly, 12 Kyle, a voice that you know and trust. This podcast will bring you thought-provoking moments, compelling stories, and a whole lot of fun. Whether you're a first-time listener or just tuning in, each episode promises to be something new and exciting. So sit back, relax, join 12 Kyle, myself, and my guests as we break down the world around us and give you stories that you've never heard before. From nostalgic throwbacks to everything in between, the 12 Kyle Podcast is a front row seat to this conversation. Subscribe now and never miss an episode of the 12 Kyle Podcast, where the vibe is always real and the discussion is always worth your time. Through this podcast. And if you know me, you know I don't throw the word friend around lightly. Almost everybody that you've seen or heard on this podcast I consider to be a friend, particularly if you've seen him more than once. If you've seen him more than once, and so I'm not, I am very proud of that. I love the fact that, people like, King Germ from Pod and Saved Our Marriage, Baylor, BTG for President, Britt, I could talk about this all day, Eclectic from the EDP and the Before Everything Changed and Encyclopedia Hip Hop. These are people that I've met and become friends with. And I mean, like, so it's one thing to have, common goals, common ideas as far as podcasting is concerned. It's another thing to meet people in person and vibe with them and rock with them, or have their phone numbers and you develop a friendship, a brotherhood, that type of thing where, they're a part of your daily. Uncle Dolomite, can't forget about the billionaire from the Too Much Game podcast, where, I've hung out with and spent time with. And like I said, built friendships. I mean, for me, that goes a long way. And I don't want to start naming names because I know I'll forget somebody. So if I forgot somebody, just charge it to my head, not my heart. And then obviously you who listen, I don't make episodes with a number in mind, like, okay, I gotta get 2,000 people to hear this episode, or I gotta get 7,000 views on YouTube. I don't work like that. To me, that's counterproductive, because I'm not looking for numbers, because I make a couple of dollars at my job. So I'm okay money-wise. So the podcast, while it does generate some money, it don't generate enough money for me to quit my job. So I'm cool in that aspect where I'm not doing this for any type of financial gain. I genuinely want to share a piece of me, share my story. So I've been very, very blessed in that aspect of, it wasn't something that I had to do for a bag. I'm not going to tell you I turned down a bag, but I also understand that with more money that comes with this, you have to give certain things up. And contractually, I'm locked in through next year. So you're going to get the 12 Kyle podcast, but I'll be honest, I'm never going to compromise what I do on this podcast for $1. It's just not worth it to me. And I've often said, and I also pass this on to other fellow podcasters, the minute that your podcast feels like work, it's time to quit. It's time to quit. And I mean, like I said, I've enjoyed watching not just, fellow friends, but fellow podcasters and people who I consider to be friends. Danny Foxworth is one that comes to mind, who I've met. We've hung out, been at South Carolina State homecoming games. Someone who has said to me, hey, I started my podcast after hearing you do your thing. And I mean, that means a lot, because, one of my favorite MCs, the late, great Nipsey Hussle, says one of the greatest things that you could do is inspire people. And Danny's the only person that I inspired. I mean, that's a great thing, but I don't necessarily do it for that, but it's been people like that along the way who I've helped. And I'm always willing to, record with someone. I never say no. It's just about what time can we fit it in. I mean, like I said, I am just really, really pleased with everything that I've come across, the people I've come across, J Bug, from Autumn to Aries and like I said, I don't want to start naming names because I know I'm going to forget somebody, but most importantly, I thank you, the listeners, because you guys help make the podcast. But I'll be honest, I always want to give something creatively to the people who listen. And I'm never going to mail one in. If I don't think the episode's up to par, I promise you'll never hear it. There's about 5 or 6 episodes that I did and I recorded and I was like, nah, this ain't good enough. And they're either still on my hard drive or they're deleted. And I think all but one of them has been deleted. There's one still on my hard drive. I contemplated releasing it, but after I listened to like the first couple of minutes of it, I was like, I just haven't deleted it yet, but it's going to get deleted. That's one thing that I can say, where the 12 Kyle podcast and the 12 radio show differ, because I think at one point in time, and it wasn't a long stretch, but it was a stretch where I think I was making episodes for the 12 radio show to appease certain people, or I would say, hey, what do y'all want to talk about? That type of thing. And trust me, when I give you an episode of the 12 Kyle podcast, is whatever I want to talk about, because I don't feel like I can just BS my way through 25 minutes of an episode. I refuse to. And here's the thing. People know when you're not giving it everything that you got. And I'm a firm believer in delivering what it is because my name is attached to it. And like I said, I want to make sure that I'm doing the best that I can do by me. If I'm satisfied with it, you'll hear it. If I'm not satisfied with it, I promise you'll never hear it because I'm never going to mail it in. Going forward, not much is going to change going forward as far as the podcast is concerned. I'll make some slight changes here or there. One thing that I will say, and I can tell you guys this now, I'm probably going to pull back on the Sunday episodes. And I'm not telling you that I won't do them. I'm just not going to tell you that I'm going to do a Sunday episode every Sunday because I'll be honest, sometimes I'm pushing for the Sunday episodes. Sometimes, and it's not because of content. I want to say never. I doubt very seriously that I'll run out of content. I have plenty of things to talk about. Right here, you can't see it on camera, but there's a book of my show ideas. I literally have over 120 ideas and concepts for future podcasts. So I got enough to talk. And that's just on the 12 Kyle podcast. I ain't even talking about the Rap Soul podcast. So it's, I have more than enough to talk about, but I want to make sure that, I'm always going to give you what I'm supposed to give you. So there may be some Sundays where you don't see the 12 Kyle podcast. Don't panic. There'll be a new episode every Thursday. I can guarantee you that, but there won't be one every Sunday. And it just really is going to depend on how much I can get done. And I'm going to tinker with some things. I told myself this year that I was going to probably work a little bit more on our YouTube. But the thing that I found out is that because this podcast existed for probably the better part of 4 years before I had any YouTube videos, most of my audience, 95% of my audience is, they listen, they don't watch. And so I may have, 40 to 50 people that watch each episode on YouTube. Now, a lot of people watch the shorts, but as far as sitting down watching an episode, not a lot of people watch it. So you probably won't see me doing a whole bunch of graphics and, fireworks and all kind of stuff on the YouTube. Is probably not going to happen. I thought at one time I probably would get away from the music, but I do like the music aspect of the podcast, at least having some underlying music under my vocals. Some episodes you'll hear, some episodes you won't, but for the most part, there won't be many changes going into the new calendar year. Like I said, I just can't guarantee you that there's going to always be a Sunday episode, but just subscribe. If you subscribe, you won't miss a thing. In fact, if you subscribed, you know that this episode was released on Wednesday. My normal release date is Thursday, but I wanted to drop it on the actual anniversary of this podcast. But yeah, I'm not going to belabor the point. I just wanted to come on here and say it is a celebration. I will be celebrating. Are we drinking? No, I'm not drinking. I'm not drinking anything, but I do have a bottle of champagne. You guys can't see it on camera, but I do have a bottle of champagne. I may sip a little bit of that. Tomorrow's a work day, so I ain't trying to go crazy. Plus, champagne be messing with my sinuses here lately. So, but that's pretty much what I drink. I don't really drink a lot of stuff anymore. I kind of lost the taste for alcohol a little bit. So, but champagne's still my thing. But yeah, may pop a little champagne just to celebrate. Because again, it's like a birth for me, and my name is attached to it. So I am very happy and very thankful that I've made it this far. Will there be 800 episodes? I don't know. I'm going to keep giving you this keep giving you this podcast for as long as it's fun, as long as I have time to do it. And so far, it's been 10 years and it hasn't stopped. Will it be another 10 years? Who knows? But I think there's something to that in the sense of being able to communicate and let this being therapy, not just for me, but for the listener. And I think because I've done it so long, there are probably several people out there, and that's you, who feel like you know me, right? And you know a lot about me, and I'm happy about it. And you may or may not ever comment on anything. You may not ever share it or whatever. but you listen every Thursday. You listen Sundays when we drop new episodes. You listen to the Rap Soul podcast on Mondays and Fridays. And I'm thankful for that. And I try to say it as much as I can, but thank you. Because I know listen, when I started this podcast 10 years ago, there wasn't 5 million other podcasts to compete with. So I'm very appreciative for those who tap in weekly and listen to whatever it is I want to talk about. And again, it's whatever I want to talk about. And I'm glad that people tap in and listen, because trust me, you have plenty of other podcasts that you can listen to. And I never lose sight of that. But I think what it comes down to is ultimately you guys kind of share the same feelings and the same mantra that I do. If I rock with you, I rock with you. If I don't, I don't. And at the end of the day, that's all that I can ask for. So thank you for rocking with me for 700 episodes. Thank you for rocking with me for 10 years. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate my family. I appreciate my friends in this podcast game, my friends who have come through, the friends who I have who I don't even know are friends because they listen and they're part of this movement. I want to thank you. I want to thank you. I want to thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes every Thursday and sometimes on Sundays. Also, don't forget about the sister podcast. It's the new baby, as we call it. It's called the Rap Soul Podcast. On the Rap Soul Podcast, that is the intersection where we have discussions about music and artists from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s when it comes to rap, soul, hip-hop, and R&B. Simply put, folks, it's the best music podcast that you have never heard. So make sure that you check it out. If you'd like to contribute to this podcast financially, hit us up on Cash App, TWELVEKYLE. Hell, it's our birthday. Send us $10. Send us $12. I would really appreciate it. You can also buy merch. Just hit the link in the description box and check out the 12 Kyle podcast merch. We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies, we've got coffee mugs. Listen, we got it all and we got it for the low. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle for the 700th episode, and for the 10-year anniversary, I am signing off. I will catch you guys next time.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.